please, maiden speech, David Johnston.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for letting me give my maiden speech this afternoon. I have to confess I'm glad to go first of the maiden speeches because the quality that I've heard so far on both sides of the House in these days in Parliament has been so high that I think if I'd had to listen to several while sitting here, I might have signalled to you I was changing my mind, and I'd do it in a couple of months instead. I have the privilege of succeeding the Right Honourable Ed Vasey as a member for Wantage, and I didn't know Ed before the campaign last month, but I would hear on the doorstep about what a good constituency MP people thought he had been. And of course, far beyond the constituency, he did so much to promote the creative and tech industries of the UK, and I feel sure he'll continue to do that in his post-parliamentary life. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with Wantage, and I know that some of you are, but it's located in Oxfordshire. It starts in the eastern border in the historic town of Wallingford, which is a place of key moments in our history, not least the Archbishop of Canterbury of the time being the last remaining resistance really to William the Conqueror before he became king, and it was at Wallingford that he submitted to his authority. As you move further west, you come to Didcot, which is the largest town in the constituency. This is usually the point at which people who are not sure where Wantage is or whether they've been in it, they say, yes, Didcot, because they've changed trains in Didcot Parkway Station. And I encourage them to leave the station and come and see all that Didcot has to offer. A couple of years ago, it was judged England's most normal town. And I feel rather proud to represent England's most normal town. Further west you come to Wantage itself, birthplace of King Alfred the Great, and there's a statue of him that stands proudly in the market square. Northwest of that is Farringdon, which is another very picturesque market town, but it holds a special place in my heart because it's where they held the meeting to select the Conservative candidate for Wantage. Indeed, another one. And then on the far western border you have Shrivenham, and that's a place, of course, where you have so many of the military families, past and present, who serve our country so well. So Ed's departure is my considerable gain, and I feel extremely lucky to represent the people of Wantage. All across the constituency you have beautiful villages. You have cutting-edge science and technology in Harwell Park and Melton Park. You have SMEs, you have multinational businesses, and you have first-rate farming, which demonstrates every day how high the standards of British agriculture are. Yeah. If the challenges of my constituency can be summed up in one key word, it's infrastructure. Now, in different parts of the constituency, that means different things. In some places, that's about road safety and trying to reopen Grove Station, one of those cut under the beaching cuts. In other parts, it's about GP appointments and school places. In the more rural areas, it's about broadband. And I know that lots of these issues are familiar to members on both sides of the House. So there's lots in the Queen's speech for me to welcome because improving infrastructure runs through it. But the reason I wanted to speak today is because of education. So, as some of the members of the House know, I had never been a political candidate before last month. And I've been chief exec of a charity trying to improve education and employment opportunities. And there was an immediate contrast for me, a very surprising baptism by fire, that when I had been a chief exec of a charity and I spoke at events, people in the audience would nod encouragingly at the seeming wisdom of my remarks. And the second I became a political candidate, they would shake their heads disparagingly at the seeming stupidity of my remarks. So I had to get used to that very quickly, and I'm grateful to the members on the other side for not doing it, given it's my main speech today. I'm sure I can look forward to that in the future. But I attended a school where only 20% of people passed any 5 GCSEs, never mind 5 good GCSEs. My mum left school at 16 and got a job as soon as she could. My dad left school at 14 and joined the army as soon as he could. And I then spent the next 16 years running organisations to provide opportunities to young people from similar backgrounds and far more challenging backgrounds to get better education and get a better job. In short, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to try and improve social mobility. Sorry, Madam Deputy Speaker, I didn't need to change. To improve social mobility. And I'd like to bring social mobility back into the debates in this House as much as I can, because last year it was referred to fewer than half the times it was in 2016. And yet many of us in this House have stories of having been socially mobile ourselves. We all represent parents in our constituency who are concerned that their children may not have as good a life as they had. And that should be at the core of what I think we should be doing here. So there's lots in the Queen's speech for me to welcome. Firstly, the improvement in the per-pupil funding across schools, which helps to correct a historic imbalance where some areas were given a lot more money to deal with the challenges of their pupils than those in other areas. I've looked at what it will mean for the schools in my constituency, and it's a significant increase. I hope that part of the money might be able to be used to attract teachers to go and teach in more challenging areas where they're most needed. The second thing I welcome is the raising of the starting salary for teachers, because I think it is important that that keeps pace with the starting salary offered, particularly by private sector graduate schemes. And I think it says something important about the value we place on teaching as a profession, because certainly from my point of view, it should be regarded extremely highly because it's crucial to the future of this country. And then running through this Queen's speech is, of course, greater emphasis on skills and technical education. And I hope that we might finally be able to achieve parity between vocational education and academic education. So education is, of course, important to social mobility, but what happens in schools and colleges is not just the only thing that matters for young people. And improving social mobility is not just a job for government. And I hope that our charities, our local authorities, our universities, our employers will continue to increase the role that they play in providing opportunity to young people. I worked with thousands of young people who needed the opportunity. They needed the door opened, and then they would show what they could do. And it is absolutely true, Madam Deputy Speaker, that talent is everywhere, opportunity is not. And this Queen's speech goes a considerable way to extending opportunity to places that have lacked it for far too long.